Continuing on that same idea of widespread systemic change, I wanted to go ahead and discuss probably one of the most potentially impactful ideas, which is something you had mentioned earlier, which is prison abolition. For so many people, they they can't fathom a world where prisons are abolished because we've completely normalized them as just this regular part of society that you know might be the uh, uh, reality of our history, but that doesn't have to be the future of our country. That doesn't have to be the future of our destiny. And as somebody who has an inside look at this system from a high level understanding, what's your take on prison abolition? And have you identified any paths that might be most likely towards getting us to that stage of abolition?
Yeah, so yeah, I personally believe that excuse me, abolish prisons has to be like your end goal, but it's also something I feel in a sad way I don't expect to see like in my life or if I have children and grandchildren, even their lives, just because like you say, it is something that's so fundamentally different from the core of like how we operate, and for many people, you can't imagine like something different existing from what you've seen. So like
Mm-hmm.
we've, had those conversations with people that we have bailed out and their family members. We have our community calls and
Mm-hmm.
I remember one meeting I was leaving and the icebreaker, which now I think was not a really great icebreaker question, was like basically was asking them to imagine a world without prisons. Like, what would you like to see instead? And for
Mm-hmm.
many people, or I think it wasn't even without prisons; it was without police. So like even
Mm.
a smaller chunk of that, and for them it was just like one person was really honest and was like, you know what, I can't imagine that. Like, don't we need them? It's sort of like can't imagine like anything um existing that would like be able to protect us if police weren't there or if prisons weren't there. Like what, or people always say, what will happen when, someone's murdered, like if you don't have prisons and things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think one of the things about like abolition and the call for like abolishing prisons and like the police is that you sort of have to also go from the angle of like of building up new things as well, and like it might be baby steps. So like one thing with like taking a small step of abolishing the police, a smaller step than that, it's just sort of like I know in Philadelphia there's been this movement now to like remove police from mental health emergency calls. And so like, when you call 911, the police will come in no matter what it is. And oftentimes you see when the police show up, things very well might go left just because like, we can get to that, the nature of the training and, how they, when you have a hammer, everything is a nail, and
Mm-hmm.
and so like they're going to treat all these cases similarly. And so in Philadelphia there's been this call to like we want to have like first responders who are separate from the police who get sent out to like respond to mental health emergencies. And we want these people to be like um mental health workers who are completely separate from police. And so in Philadelphia has been a problem because there's been legislation written around that, but they've like split police in there. So it's like a co-responder model because we can't imagine this happening. But
Mm-hmm.
like imagine like, we try to tell people, imagine like you call 911 because like your brother is having a mental health crisis and they put you through to like a mental health specialist and they come to your house and they help respond to your brother and his needs like without guns, like without like tasers, without violence. Like what would that look like? And like even just that small change is something that one is like easy for people to conceptualize, to be like this yes, this is the work, this is a good thing, this could work. And so you just build from that to like, thinking about what are like some different community safety models that we could do that don't involve the police. And so, I don't see that in Philly yet as much, but you've seen other cities like Chicago where they're trying to do just like more like violence disruptors in the community, having community people who are called in when things go down instead of the police. And I think with prisons, and so it has to be like the same thing in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Just thinking that about like, well, what is the goal of like prisons? At one point in this country, prisons were supposed to be about reform. Like in Philadelphia, there's like Eastern State Penitentiary, which was at the time when it was built, this model for like what penitentiary is supposed to be. It's supposed to be about penitence, you know, and so you would put people in these little cells by themselves, and they could think about what they did, and they come out and that's supposed to reform them. At the time, that was supposed to be like progressive and revolutionary, but we realized that now that that's basically torture. And you know, it's not about penitence or charity people. It's basically revenge and punishment. So it's sort of like, I think part of it is like getting people to like switch from this value of like revenge or like even this penitence that we get from this Judeo-Christian sense of like how to respond to like sins, interpersonal, communal sins, you know, and thinking more about like, okay, what about like restoration? Like, you know, can there be some like reconciliation? Can there be some accountability? How do we get to that? You know, that doesn't involve like putting a person in a cage and forgetting about them because oh, they have revoked their right to be considered human because they've done like the sin against a person or the community. And so, yeah, I think it sort of has to be, people have to start thinking of it, just like thinking about our values and just how we respond to like conflict and like sins, you know, in order for us to get to the part where we can actually get rid of prisons because I think it's so deeply ingrained and just like, especially if you have a Judeo-Christian background, like our religion, like in this country, everything. It's like everything is about retribution, revenge, like punishment. Like even, you know, I had like this conflict with like my sister-in-law, and I'm just like, oh, I want to get back at them, and I'm like, why am I thinking about like revenge? Like it's not like he has to feel my anger. It's like, why is that like necessary here? Like, what about like the healing? What's going to get us to like a reconciliation or like accountability, like letting them know like, okay, why was this hurtful for me? How can we move past this? And that's a lot harder to do than just like cursing someone out and like maybe getting in a fight. It's a lot harder to have those like conversations where you're vulnerable, you might apologize, you're hearing from someone else's perspective that has hurt you, and getting to some like healing where like you're not going to be like compensated with a person's pound of flesh. You know, I just think that's really, yeah, counter to the ways a lot of us have been brought up.